When you are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Get Stuff Done podcast with me, Gordon Dudley. It's great to be back for another episode, and we have a fantastic guest once again to talk to you about their experiences on getting stuff done. So today, I'm really happy to introduce to you Travis Bennett, someone who is originally from Australia, who's now currently based in Singapore, and is the COO of Doers Circle. And we're going to be hearing about his experiences both as a business owner, but also as a startup executive, and the journey that he's been on across multiple countries, overseas, since the multiple years that we have known each other. So a very warm welcome, Travis.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm super happy to be here, and I'm super happy to share and hopefully inspire all the listeners out there on how we can get stuff done together.
Excellent. And, I'm really especially glad that you agreed to come on, because actually prior to us launching this podcast, we were already talking about this project when it was kind of in its infancy, what it might be, how it might kind of evolve. And, it seems now that we have launched that, the podcast is really a key foundation of the Get Stuff Done project. And so it's great that you've decided, or you've said yes to be able to come on and discuss with us, because I think you have some interesting perspectives on it.
No, I'm super happy to support and also to share. I think when you're building stuff like this, whether it's yourself, your idea, or one of your friends' ideas, the more support you can give, it always helps. It gives them new ideas, new inspiration, new insights, things that maybe they didn't think about themselves, and it ends up being better because of that. So the more sharing and the more people that can share and give back, it just helps each other as you grow and figure out what you're working on and what you want to do.
So let's age ourselves. Let's let everybody
That's
know
a loaded question.
How old we are when we think about where and when we first met. That was, of course, I guess, maybe end of 2007, beginning of 2008, and not in your country or my country or either of the countries that we're now living in, but actually in Denmark. How did that come about?
For me, I'd been backpacking, and once I returned to Australia, I realized I needed a real job, and a job that would allow me to travel. I found Maersk quite interesting, because they had a traineeship program where you could get together with a few hundred other students from all over the world, all working for Maersk, and they brought us together every 6 months for training in Copenhagen, which
training
was
in every sense of the word, I think. Just to kind of interject there, right?
Yeah. There was formal training in classrooms with teachers. There was a lot of networking and connections formed behind the scenes. I actually met my wife at one of these modules, which also got me to my journey here today. And of course, friends like yourself who have gone on to do some pretty inspiring stuff as well. Sorry?
And how to drink 10 coffees a day, I think also was one thing that I learned there. Maybe that's the roots of my coffee addictions today. But no, you're absolutely right.
Staying productive in a very intense 2-week period of classes and extracurriculars.
Indeed. And how long did you continue to stay with that organization? Whereabouts did you work with them?
Sure. So after, throughout the traineeship, I was in Brisbane and Sydney in Australia. Then I got the chance to expat. Of course, I chose Thailand because that was where my girlfriend at the time was based. Moved to Thailand in 2009. I stayed there for a little while. I took a stint to Denmark to work at the corporate office, but quickly realized that Danish winter wasn't where I wanted to be. Went back to Thailand with Lazada. So I worked for them for a while, doing their BI and intelligence reporting. Then started my own company, worked for myself for the better part of 8 years, working from Thailand, where I set up my company, working remotely from Myanmar because we were there for my wife's work, and I ran my business from on location. And then when we came to Singapore, I was looking for something else. because I'd been consulting and building B2B marketing strategies for a long time. And I wanted to kind of be part of something that was going to impact more than just 10 clients a year kind of thing. And that was what, when I was looking at how to get started and how to start my business in Singapore, I came across Doers Circle. And then we can talk more about it later, but it actually had solved a lot of the problems I had when I was trying to figure out how do I do business in a country like Singapore. And that to me kind of had an aha moment of, well, I'd suffered with this problem. I know a lot of my friends who'd started businesses had suffered with this problem. And if I know more than 10 people who are probably suffering through the same problem, maybe they're onto something with this startup. And that was what got me excited about joining. But I kind of, one thing that we like to refer to ourselves, and I think this resonated with me, is we call ourselves doers, right? Because you've got all these independent doers around the world, which is why it's Doers Circle. We want to bring all these people together. But I've always identified myself as one of those persons. Like I can learn this, or I can figure this out. I can do it myself. And I like to think that I can do an okay job when I try to. And I think that's driven my career. It's driven my change to working for myself and figuring out how to do that. As I'm sure you experienced, starting a company in a place like Korea isn't for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I mean, and I would fully agree with what you said about yourself as being a person who classifies himself as a doer. I felt that way back when we were working for the same company, and I think that's why our paths next crossed actually when you were running your own business. I had recently set up my business RDI here in Korea. And at that time, you helped us to, I think we had a website, but it was, let's say, not quite what we wanted it to be, and definitely not a really good representation of us. And you took it to another level. You helped us really elevate that website, the company website that we had at the time, and also ongoing support as well. And I think we've been more in touch since then. So our lives kind of like post Maersk. You of course continue to have still a strong connection through your wife to Maersk, and it was great when we had a chance to meet a couple of months ago in Singapore and reconnect for me with the former Maersk employees, although former for myself, but still many of them still working there, which I think is a great testament to the company, because there is really no such thing as a job for life. But I think Maersk, is one of the companies that, at least for me, from that training program, did at least it talked about the values and tried to kind of espouse the values. Of course, no company can fully live the values 100% of the time, especially with such a large organization like that. But you'd set up your own business. Talk me through how naturally that came to you, whether it was a kind of like a moment you felt this is what I've got to do, or was it something that you always had in the back of your mind that you wanted to do? How did that kind of come about?
I think if I reflect on it, I've always thought of myself as a high achiever. I think is probably the best way to describe that. I wouldn't say I am a high achiever compared to some of the people out there that have done some pretty remarkable things, but I like to think of myself that I am. And when I was in Maersk, I was dreaming of, how do I become CEO of Maersk, right? Like that was the goal then. And then I also realized that there's challenges in a large organization to actually get to that path. From the MyZ program, they sell you the dream, they sell you the leadership that you can grow into. But I also realized that there was small chances of that being an Australian from basically the bottom of the world working with a Danish company. I had a lot of factors working against me in that regard, and not to say that you can't grow to be that, but I saw that being a very long path for me, and I wanted to accelerate that. And that was when I said, okay, what's more fast-paced than a traditional business? And I was like, okay, then that's definitely a startup. So I joined Lazada, which at that time that raised about 20 million. So it was very early stages for them. And I saw the pace that they were working at. I also saw the opposite of a company like Maersk, where people stay for a long time. and there's quite a bit of turnover, but that also led to opportunities in a company like that. But seeing the inner workings of that company, but they'd raised money, they've made at this point, I think that there were 15 or 16 startups that Rocket Internet had launched. I realized that there was a lot of things behind the scenes that could be working better. And my background was kind of in strategy and planning and how do you fix things. And there was a lot in Lazada that I saw wasn't working when it should have been. And then it got me thinking that if this is a Lazada, if this is a company that has so much money behind it to do things the right way, but they're, because of speed and execution going to market, that maybe they haven't put that in. What about all the business owners? What about all the other people who maybe don't even have the resources to allocate to this? And that was when I had an idea of, you know what, maybe I could do that for people. So I started freelancing for myself. I was writing blog content at the start. Then I realized that the real thing that moves the needle for the business isn't the blog, but it's actually the website and the sales pages and that kind of that professional image that they need. So then I got a team together and I started building websites for small businesses and upgrading that. And that was when we worked together. And that progressed into doing more copywriting and more sales focused pages on how to actually sell a product. How do you push someone who maybe hasn't heard about your business and what they do? How do you get them excited enough to pick up the phone and call you or set up a meeting or purchase your product? And I studied a lot about the B2B marketing kind of psychology. And then I worked with a lot of SaaS companies. I set up some partnerships with other agencies who needed an expert on this because I like to think that I'm quite creative. And I had a lot of fun creating some really, I don't want to say weird marketing campaigns, but they're definitely not traditional marketing campaigns. So we were sending packages to from large SaaS companies to their target accounts, trying to get their sales reps booked in with meetings in the C-suite. And that was quite a fun period because I got to basically control my hours, control my work. I got to choose my clients. I got to have a lot of freedom on my projects. And I think until this point, I realized I'd always been missing that. You know, when you work in a company, you get told what to do. But for myself, I wanted to kind of dictate that on my own terms. But it is a tough transition.
Right. And so a question on the transition, stepping out of big corporate into what essentially was then starting from nothing, right? What was it that you had to change, like in your kind of mantra of getting stuff done, right? You know, in your work ethic, in your personal like organization, what was the biggest change that you had to make in order to make sure that you can make progress and be successful at that?
I think it comes down to like the funniest example is the first months where I was out of work and I was like, yeah, you know what, I could watch Netflix and I relaxed a bit. I went to the gym quite a lot and then I got to the end of the month and I kind of ran through my P&L and I looked at it and I was like, well, this sucks. You know, and that was the moment for me where I kind of realized like you've only got so many hours to put food on the table, right? And every minute that you spend, every hour needs to be optimized. Is it growing your business? Is it solving a process? Is it selling a client? And that was the point where I kind of realized that if I wanted to make this a go, if I wanted to be successful, I would need to actually work at being successful. I couldn't pretend to be a startup founder. I actually had to learn and figure things out. So I did a lot of things. Like I had a calendar with all the things that I needed to do up on my wall for a while, and I was using that. I've used to-do lists and all these things. The thing that I still like is sitting down in the morning and I have a notebook, and they tease me about it even now in Doer Circle because I take notes of everything, what I want to do in the day, and then I get very much a lot of satisfaction as I cross it out that it's been actioned, and then notes from all the meetings and stuff like that. So it's almost like a history of past meetings and all this, and that helps me stay on top of things.
And we're talking handwritten notes here.
We're talking handwritten notes. There's I'm just looking to see if it's near. It's in there, but there's comments on everything from like how we tackling this marketing problem to what are we doing with the strategy for the business. I probably should keep better eyes on that book and not let it get into the wrong hands. But it became almost a game for me. I challenged myself to increase my income every month, and that helped me to do things that a lot of freelancers and contractors weren't willing to do, which is like raise their prices or push back on clients that weren't the right fit. It got to a point where I was referring people who came to me to other people because what I was best at and where I made the most impact for a business, um, you can't be a jack of all trades. You need to
Sure.
be the best at your specific thing. Um, and I think just my competitive nature of like I wanted to prove that I was doing this to myself, to my family, to my wife was a very powerful motivator for me.
You mentioned about how you consider yourself, as a high achiever, and is that then something that you're also very kind of like conscious of? Like, is it something that's always kind of with you in terms of when you're working and getting stuff done? Is it something that you're always trying to do more? Like it's never enough? Like how does that kind of manifest itself on a daily basis with your kind of like work-life
Sure.
balance?
No, no, of course. And that, when I was consulting, I definitely had more work and less life as a balance, right? And when you're billing by the hour, if you can book 10 hours instead of 6 hours, you look at that and you say, well, that's an extra like $600 or $700 in your bank account for the day. You don't know how next month or the 3 months down the line is going to go, so you push yourself hard.
Sure.
What I realized is that if you're not enjoying the money that you earn, then why are you working so hard for that as well? Like, of course, you need to set yourself up for the future. You need to be hitting your targets and all of that. But there's a point where your quality of life goes down and also the quality of your work. And I was working far too much, I think, when I was in the very early days of working for myself. And I started looking very hard on if a project was a certain budget and it took a certain amount of hours, I would actually track those hours and then I would work out like, hey, I've been earning $20 an hour doing this particular project because I gave a friend's rate or it was too low or something like that. Is it worth my time to be doing this, or should I be charging more, or should I have said no to this project? And that kind of framed the
Hmm.
evolution of my agency.
Okay.
And I think now one of the things that I'm quite good at, because I have two daughters, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, um, is the start of the day figuring out what is reasonable to get done in a day.
Mhm, mhm.
Of course, I think I learned when you're billing by the hour, you learn to get very effective. Like stuff that sending an invoice doesn't get you paid, so you send it in a minute instead of 30 minutes playing with the fonts and the formatting and all of this. So I learned to be very, very efficient in what I do, which means
Mhm.
that I feel like I actually am very effective in getting stuff done. But there's a limit to what a single human can do in a given work period, and understanding that if I push myself too hard, then I get burned out, then I slow down the next day at work. So you need to be reasonable with
Mhm.
yourself, and also what you do in your downtime,
Mhm.
making sure you do things like going to the gym. I like going boxing and doing Muay Thai in my downtime. I get there twice a week, which is quite nice. And that also helps you reset and something that maybe you were stressed about in the morning because there was a client problem or some sort of issue. Getting your mind off it with something that's like so incredibly demanding physically is a very good way to switch your brain out of work mode into rest mode or downtime.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I appreciate it's super hard for people to do when there's a million things for your startup or your business that you should be doing. How do you turn off at 7 o'clock at night and eat dinner with your wife?
Yeah, yeah. The switching off part is, I think, only people who run their own business truly understand what that
Yeah,
means.
yeah. Because you're never off.
You can have a never-ending to-do list at work. You can be super busy, but whether you have switched off, and gone home, but it's still there, is another
Yep.
level when it's your own thing. So then after a number of years, you decided to transition into something a bit more structured,
Yep.
into the startup field, and that's where
Yep.
you are now with Doer's Circle. So how has that transition been, with
Yep.
regards to organization and now the work that you're doing? Um, Tell me a bit about that.
Sure. We're a super small team. So we're at 10 people now. And I think because of that, it's given me almost like my own startup, whilst without having a lot of the things that I didn't know about startups. Because I had a small business before. I was bootstrap funded. I made money. I had a business. I was incorporated. All of those things, but I wasn't out raising VC money. I wasn't out setting up massive partnerships. I was basically doing the work. And the things that I like about joining a company like this is I have a CEO who has a lot of experience in Asia. She's from Denmark, but her vision for the company is something that I believe that she will actually get it done. And if anyone could kind of push the transformation that we want to see, it's someone like her.
Mm.
I think being the number two in the company is also good for my role because I get to have a lot of say in a lot of the decisions, whilst also having someone with a bit more experience than me questioning, hey, is this the right choice? Have you thought about this? And maybe going a level deeper than I wouldn't have realized alone. So I like that it feels like my startup, but I also have the support of not being 100% alone, which is what I had been for quite a while. I think having the right people around you when you're working on a project or doing something, it definitely helps keep you on track. And it helps you see things that maybe you've got your kind of like your blinders on because this is what you know. They open your mind up to things that you probably maybe didn't realize or you hadn't thought about from that angle.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I'm quite enjoying now as being part of a bigger team. And instead of just being the boss telling the staff, hey, do go out and do this or execute on this, it's more of a like a democracy of, hey, how are we going to make this business work? How are we going to grow more users? And I have a lot of say in that, which is also why I enjoy the role quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were together in Singapore and we stopped by, your office space where you have some colleagues, but also some of the Do a Circle community. And it was just nice to just step in and see some people at work and have those kind of like colleagues there. And I think, yeah, you're right. There's that balance between, starting a startup versus being in a startup, which is just starting, versus a startup that is funded and has already a pathway and is going somewhere and has already some scale. I think that they're all very different stages and they all have very different kind of characteristics from work. So tell me now about a time when you failed to get stuff done, when you had a misstep, maybe something that maybe at the time you didn't even realize, but maybe kind of like with hindsight, which is of course always lovely to have, looking back, you think, I wish I'd done that differently. Like, what would that be for you in your professional career?
Yeah, I think you're never going to smooth sail, right? You're always going to have learnings. You're always going to have obstacles. We were joking about it actually the other day at work that being in a startup is actually like your job is to break down the next barrier. And then you've broken that down, but then there's another barrier and breaking that down and then breaking down the one after that. And the startups who succeed are the ones who can actually go and just continually break down these barriers, yet remain positive and remain hopeful that everything that you're doing is kind of like a step forward in the right direction. But I think the biggest learning I would say from my career has been you need to trust your gut on things because deep down what's right or wrong. If you have a bad feeling about a hire, if you have a niggle in the back of your head about a particular client, I have a couple of examples from when I was building websites and doing this where clients seemed like dream accounts, right? They had a lot of money to spend, they wanted the world, and my team could deliver on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt off, that it was like there's something wrong or there's going to be too much work or the expectations aren't super aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately always led to problems. So sometimes I was smart enough to withdraw myself from the scoping process as we work out, to say, hey, look, on further thought, we're probably not the right agency for you. Mm-hmm. Other times I wasn't smart enough. I just looked at the dollar signs that this was going to bring in. And when I talked before about, I've spent 40 hours on this project and maybe it was a nice price tag, but you break it down and you're like, hey, this equates to $10 an hour for the amount of effort and time and pain that, you shouldn't have accepted that in the first place. And
Right.
when I reflect, I knew that. I knew in my gut that these people weren't aligned with me. They were looking for somebody that they could, I don't want to say exploit, but they were looking for someone who they could tell these are the 10 things I want, but really there's 100 things that they want. They just never told you at the start. But then when you start the project, it's very hard to keep that scope and to keep your client happy.
Yeah.
So I think if I could do something different and going back, I would advise you, like, when something doesn't feel right, walk away. It's easier to walk away, and maybe there's a little bit of awkwardness or something. And I mean, that even goes to we were recently traveling in India, and when you're in a new country, you don't know the food, you don't know the places. But we follow that even in our personal lives. If you walk into a restaurant and something feels weird or it's off or you don't get a good vibe, just leave and find somewhere better. And that, I think, translates to your work, to your clients. And so that would be my advice.
Sure.
Is
No, I totally hear you. And the power of saying no, which, as you say, intuitively, especially when you're starting out, or if you're like less experienced, always, you want to say yes, right? I mean, on the one hand, the Richard Branson School of Business is take the offer, say yes, and then work out how you're going to do it as you go along.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we have to finesse that a little bit and say that there is a lot of strength in saying no. Because even like in RDI side of business, a company approaches us on a search mandate. They're looking for a certain kind of person. It's not within our expertise. Could we do the search? Well, we could definitely say we can do the search and we can kind of like get going on it, but probably not going to be successful on it, and then end up with a kind of like subpar result. However, say no, this is not within our expertise. Some time goes by, they come back to us with exactly what it is that we are an expert in, because we've told them that, and we complete that project absolutely way above expectations. It's a much better result in the end, as you say, because there isn't time wasted on both sides. So I think that's a really strong point. And I guess anybody who doesn't have 15 years plus work experience is wondering, well, how can I develop that quicker to do that? But maybe that's topic for another time. In terms of kind of getting stuff done, I mean, I think there is a certain mentality around that, and I think Do a Circle, it embodies that. I also want to say I love the branding of Do a Circle, and maybe people can see some similarities in the vivid color schemes of Get Stuff Done project, and also Do a Circle, which is something that I'm personally have developed. Beyond work, though, and maybe this is something that we kind of didn't necessarily expect to talk about, but I feel that you also are a really good example of a working dad, and also a dual working parent family as well. Tell us a little bit about how you've been able to build that balance, and maybe why you think that's important, and some kind of perspectives on that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go crazy if I wasn't working. It's maybe part of my mindset, the psychology that makes me up. I think it's also my wife would echo the same thing. Maybe that's why we all got into the traineeship program at Maersk, because they knew that these are the people who are driven to succeed, and they're not going to be happy until they do. So I don't ever see myself in a period of not working. I did take a break after Maersk. So I spent 6 months playing Muay Thai and relaxing in Thailand, which was fun for a period. But then also, it's back to...
That was before
you want to
kids,
do something with your life.
Maybe I should
No, that's before kids. After kids, I think it's, you want to set a good example for them in the way that you live your life, like in terms of values, but also in terms of they're going to grow up and reflect like what you did, right? And both my wife and I, we are incredibly hard workers. So whether that's late calls or making sure that stuff always gets done, they see that. But I think it's also important to take time out for them. So we have some routines set up, like on a Friday night, we do this thing called Morocco because our kids don't get screen time unless they're doing tutoring. They don't get to watch cartoons or anything during the week. But Friday night, it's a free for all. We put mattresses on the floor. They can choose whatever movie they want. They can stay up late, and it makes this kind of special family time around that. And I think the key for us, I mean, one of the nice things about Singapore is we get a lot of help. So we have a live-in helper here, and she helps with a lot of the household stuff, which means that, we can focus more on work, and then the time that we spend with our kids is a lot more quality time because we aren't having a lot of the, we have a helper. So there's the chores and stuff like that, that she helps take care of there too.
Yeah.
But I think the goal is, at least for me, is to, like, when you're doing something, you're on in that. So if I'm working, I'm very focused and I'm getting my work done. I'm not doom scrolling on Instagram. I'm actually getting what needs to be done so that I can finish, and then I can go to the gym. I take my daughter boxing with me. She goes rock climbing with my wife when she goes rock climbing. The youngest one, she's a bit young for some of these activities still, but we still go out and we skateboard and we ride bikes, and we make sure that, yes, we're very dedicated to work, but the time that you put into the family also needs to be quality. It's not that we're all sitting there and just playing on our phones and answering emails and not talking to each other as well, which can be a habit that's very easy to fall into when there's, a never-ending stream of emails coming in. Yeah.
Sure.
Did that answer? Was that?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people, work-life balance is the commonly used word, but I don't like balance because that suggests that it's one or the other. I much prefer work-life integration, which is finding the right ways to manage within a family. I think it's like the great example you gave of that Friday night kind of family time, which it's partially about scheduling it and kind of almost like formalizing it, but it's also about just finding the right ways that work on an individual family basis, according to case by case. And I just think that we do still, as a society, think that work comes first, and people often feel kind of trapped by their work. And I do have a lot of people in my network who, they tell me that they don't see their kids Monday through Friday. Now, they might do the best they can on the weekends and dedicate all their time, but the reality is that they're probably pretty tired from working so intensively, from Monday to Friday right through. Plus, I know through my own kids' eyes that a day is a long time. For us as adults, days, weeks, months pass by, and we always say how quickly time is passing, but that's not the same for kids. So I think that definitely remembering that, it's about the moderation of a reasonable amount to get done, like you said in your daily plan. How much can we reasonably get done, whilst at the same time making sure that our children are also getting as much as they deserve from us, which I think I guess I'm hope that there can be more flexibility from companies and from workplaces to aid that, I guess.
And I think the world is shifting, right? When you look at the future of work trends, people are consulting instead of taking a full-time job, and companies want consultants to come in and do a project instead of having a full-time staffer that once the project's finished, they don't know what to do with. But the world is definitely changing, right? Like, people are demanding a different way to work. And that's also why, when people ask me about Doer Circle, like, why did you join? One of the things that we're working on is a way for companies to look after their flexible talent a little bit better, right? Because 10 years ago, everyone was talking about, hey, you want to be the employer of choice. Google built the Googleplex and gave everyone food and massages, and no one ever wanted to leave. And they never saw their kids Monday to Friday because they were were working throughout the week. The world now is very much different, and we want to kind of help manage this transition and help the companies who maybe don't know how to deal with these flexible workers. We want to give them a platform, a way to tap into this workforce and to also get the best possible people out of the workforce. Because I guess you probably see this in recruitment, but the best talent, they can demand whatever terms they want, right? If they're the number one in their field, companies are going to be bending over backwards to help them. And in the old days, that was a big salary and a nice car and, whatever. Now it's flexible work and, the remote work. Maybe it's a contract basis so that they can take on other jobs and augment their income through other ways. And Doer Circle is something that can actually help this. And I think when companies realize this and we actually finish building what we've been working on with the enterprise platform, it's going to be super interesting to see how the trend shifts, because it's half the global workforce, like 48% of the world is self-employed in some shape or fashion, right? That's people demanding things anew in a different way. There's no more job for life, right? You're not going to be employed by Maersk forever.
And I think it's also great to see the way that technology is facilitating that, right? I mean, it's about specialization. It's about people doing what they are relatively best at, which I think is the most ancient of Adam Smith economics theory, right? The specialization. And technology allows you to do that. And that's what I guess I'm trying to do also in my company as I take on team members, project consultants and freelancers, but also building the tech stack, which takes away the stuff which we are not relatively good at. Let that very specialized and expert in that area do that, so that we can focus on what we do best, which I think is a very nice kind of full circle on getting stuff done. So I think on that note, we can wrap up, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Travis for being with us for this episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. I think also a big thank you to everybody who's listening. It's great to see with every episode us building a bigger audience. If you can do anything, please do subscribe to whatever platform you are listening to or watching this podcast on, and share it with your network. That would be the greatest favor that you could do, so that we can help more people listen to the podcast and also understand about getting stuff done. So Travis, thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thank you. And I would also just like to interject just one last part. Thank you for allowing me to share and to be part of this platform. I'm super happy to connect with everyone. I'm sure there's going to be links to me in the show notes, but I just want to reiterate that we're open and we're here to help.
Thank you, Travis. Thanks, everybody, and see you again next time on the Get Stuff Done podcast.